Good morning, everybody. I'm Karl Vilacoba of the Monmouth University Urban Coast Institute and also the communications lead on the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal. I'm excited to kick off this special joint webinar hosted by the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast Ocean Data Portal teams. This morning, we're going to take a tour of the roughly 3,000 interactive maps showing fish, birds, and marine mammals on both the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic portals. Some of you may recall when we first released the original generation of these maps in 2016. And a couple of weeks ago, the portals and the Marine Life Data and Analysis team, or MDAT, updated these products to reflect the most recent scientific data. We also added some new maps for individual species and marine life groups. The interest in these products has been really high, so we wanted to offer our users a chance to take a deep dive into the data and really ask us anything you'd like to know about it. So and for the order of this, Emily Shumchenia from the Northeast Ocean Data Portal team is going to start us off with some background on marine life mapping and ocean planning in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions. Next, Jesse Cleary and Corey Curtis from the Duke University Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab will give us some insight on what these products are and how they were developed. After that, Emily and I will just take a few minutes to show you how to access and use these maps on the portals. Our goal is to wrap up the presentation portion in about 35-40 minutes tops so that we can dedicate the rest of the time to Q&A. You can just go ahead and type your questions into the chat window whenever you like. Although the webinar is scheduled to end at noon, we're happy to stay on for a little while longer if there are still questions to be answered. And just a final note that this webinar is being recorded for the benefit of those who couldn't make it today. You should be able to find it on the portals by early next week at the latest. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Emily.
Thanks, Karl. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Shumchenia. I'm contract staff with the Northeast Regional Ocean Council, and I've been managing the marine life and habitat data development for the Northeast Ocean Data Portal since about 2014. Just want to say thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to share with you all of these new data that have just been made available. I'm just going to kick us off here before we really dig into the data with a little bit of context and background. For those that might be less familiar with our groups and why we're offering this webinar, here's just a little bit of information. This effort was started in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions under the last administration's National Ocean Policy and even predating that policy. The Northeast Regional Ocean Council, or NROC, and the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Council on the Mid-Atlantic Council on the Ocean, or MARCO, are regional ocean partnerships. They're engaged in data development and many other activities to support ocean planning and management. And we've all been working with the MDAT team since
is joining the meeting
to develop, present, and visualize marine life data on the two portals under these groups. So Jesse's going to tell us a lot more about the universe of marine life data on the portals, but I wanted to note here some simple questions like how many right whales are hanging out in the Gulf of Maine in a typical July, and some more complex questions like where are birds that are vulnerable to collision with offshore energy infrastructure most abundant. And just note that we think that these are questions that can be answered or begun to be answered by some of the data that we've presented and that we've put on the portals. We specifically developed these data, in fact, to answer questions just like these. So obviously we're doing this webinar because we want folks to use these data along with all of the other data on the portals. And we're already seeing early indications that portal users are beginning to investigate the new marine life products. So check out the threefold increase in hits to the server when we announced the data through Twitter and our mailing list in mid-August. This graph is really a microcosm of what we're seeing on the portals in general. There's lots of interest in particular data sets around ocean planning and management announcements, meetings, and other events. So we recognize it's really important to reach out to all of you and help you access the data that you need and to provide support for its use, and we're committed to doing that. For some really specific examples of how the data are being used, definitely check out the case studies, ocean stories, blog posts, Twitter accounts, all of the content on the two sites. We're constantly adding and updating examples of these uses. And please let us know if you have a use case that you think should be featured like this. We'd love to work with you. Finally, I just want to end by noting that marine life and habitat data development is ongoing with lots of collaboration with agencies and other entities in the region, both regions. And here are some examples for what you can expect to see on the portal sometime soon. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jesse to provide us with that deep dive into the marine life data.
Hey everyone, this is Jesse Cleary. I'm a geographer in the Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab. Pulling up my presentation here. Hopefully all of you guys can see this. Emily, Carl, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep, looks good.
Full screen there. All right. Thanks everyone. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys about the latest round of data updates that our group has pushed out to both portals. I just want to begin by saying we appreciate that some of the folks on the line have reached out to us to ask how we did during Hurricane Florence. And happy to report that at least the main campus where I'm sitting was spared any impacts from the hurricane. However, our marine lab at the coast, where my colleague Corey is now sitting, did have some damage there and is still kind of assessing how quickly they can come back online. But in general, both areas are feeling more fortunate, I think, than some of our other folks closer to the South Carolina line who suffered certainly more impacts than we did. Okay, so I'm going to go relatively quickly through this. I want to give everyone a little bit of context on our work, recognizing that although many of you on the line are folks that we've spoken to many times, there will be some new folks, and we want to get those folks oriented. And then we'll go through a relatively quick update of our latest data development efforts for cetacean data, avian data, and fish data. So in terms of context, Emily showed these slides already, but where we're starting with are data and models on individual species that are produced for a range of existing, supporting existing ocean uses. So these data are developed by our group with the end goal of getting that information to the Navy, by our colleagues at NOAA NCOS for use by BOEM, et cetera. So we've got these data sets are predicting the distribution of individual species. Of course, I want to stress that is a primary kind of fundamental piece of data for most ocean planning applications. However, we are taking those data and rolling them together into species group products. We'll talk more about what those roll-ups look like. And the main point here is that those do not replace any of the individual species data that we have. They supplement those data, and we put both sets of data online through both the Northeast portal, the Mid-Atlantic portal, as well as the Marine Cadastre. So we've kind of got thousands of individual species layers and hundreds of species group layers, and I'll talk more about those in a sec here. At the individual species level, most of you have seen this slide already. Our colleagues in the Northeast Fisheries Science Center put together data on 82 fish species, variety of time steps, and survey programs. Our group at Duke, again with support from the Navy via contracting with HDR, put together predictive models for 30 species or guilds for cetaceans, including predicted density at monthly and annual time steps. And then our colleagues at the NCOS Biogeography Group put together data on 47 avian species for BOEM initially, but those provide predicted relative density at seasonal and annual time steps. As I mentioned, we take those individual species data products and we roll those together to make summary products. These summary products are relatively similar across the different taxonomic groups. So we roll those together to get group abundance or species richness. We generate biodiversity indices, and then we do generation of core abundance area or biomass area richness, slightly more complex algorithm. And I'll show you the species groups for which we combine the data to make these different summary products. I did just want to highlight that all of the individual species data that we're using have been peer reviewed and are documented. The cetacean information has appeared in peer review publications as well as internal documents that we've provided to the Navy, and they've been reviewed extensively. The work from NCOS Biogeography Group is documented in 2 different reports to BOEM, and again, the one on the right being the very latest information. And then we've also produced our own technical report, which has been updated for these version 2 data, which summarizes how we process the data that we've gotten from our partners and created summary products. And then we're in the process of writing a manuscript that also discusses the summary data product creation. All of those material that I mentioned are available on our MDAT website. The URL is at the bottom of the screen. You can get our technical report there. You can actually download most of the data that we're going to discuss today in terms of it's in GIS form as well as metadata. And then there's some other descriptive information there about how we generated these pieces of data. I did just want to highlight one important new section to that website, which is a summary of the changes that are reflected in version 2 of these data. And so there's a PDF about avian fish and marine mammal changes that we've made over the last year or so. And so I would draw your attention to those PDFs, which will be a little bit of a deeper dive into what some of the changes are than what we're going to be able to get into today. Also to highlight that over the years, we've spoken with many of you guys at a variety of different fora, and then to highlight that in 2018, we had 2 different review webinars, regional review webinars to discuss the version 2 avian data and the version 2 cetacean data in more detail, and those happened in April and May of this year. Okay, so that's the sort of the context of the work that we're doing in a very, very brief sense. So let's move on to look at what some of the cetacean data updates actually are. So remember, these are improvements to the models that we did in 2015. These include some improved modeling methods and new predictor covariates. They include a range of new data sets, the primary one being surveys from the AMAPS program, which barely missed the deadline for the 2015 models, but now they are included. And then we did drop some older data sort of on a species case-by-case basis. So the maps on the right show you in red the additional survey segments that are included in the new models that we're discussing today and what seasons those are applicable towards. So we haven't remodeled all of the species that we produced initially, but we have remodeled a good list here. Some of the highlights there are that we've taken beaked whales, which we initially modeled as a guild, and now that's in 3 models. Cuvier's beaked whale, Mesoplodon's beaked whales, and unidentified beaked whales are now separate models. And then here's the list of other species that we've remodeled. So once we've produced those individual species models, we then roll them up into the summary products based on species groups. And here's the list of species groups that we create these summary products for. This list is the same as it was in the past. I'm just highlighting that is similar. In that roll-up process, we did make some very small methodology updates to filter out very, very low density values in the richness and diversity algorithms. And then we also made a decision to leave out any fully stratified models from all of the summary products that were created. Those stratified models are species for which the prediction was an even prediction at a very low density for the entire study area.
Is joining the meeting.
So those methodology updates are documented in a variety of places, our updated technical report, as well as those change documents that I mentioned earlier. Okay, very brief on cetaceans. Let's talk about avian species. Again, these were done by Arliss Winship and colleagues at the NCOS Biogeography Group. So there are improvements from their phase 1 or version 1 modeling. They also improved some of the modeling methods and environmental covariates, predictor covariates. They also included a range of new data sets. 17 new survey data sets are represented in these new models. And then they also extended their prediction extent, I think, into Canadian waters where they had not done that previously, and potentially further offshore as well. They also added 6 additional species season models. So these were species that they had modeled previously, but had potentially had seasonal gaps in their predictions, and so they added additional seasons for those species. And then they also added 7 new species listed here that were not in their phase 1 modeling. As a result of adding new species, of the 22 species groups that we create summary products for, 12 of them included these new species. So our group membership lists have changed as a result of including these new species. And then previously, we had left out 4 species from the version 1 information that had some really high predictions that we didn't feel comfortable with, and those have all been addressed and are now included in our summary product. Here's the list of species groups that we're creating summary products for. Again, this list itself has not changed, but the membership in each one of these groups has changed slightly to include the 7 new species that they included in this round of modeling. There are really no methodology updates in terms of how we take these individual species data and make summary products out of them. We are still producing relative abundance, richness, core area abundance richness from these data. And as a reminder, we are not producing diversity indices from these data because their predictions are relative density, and so the diversity algorithm doesn't make sense in that context. And that's consistent with our version 1 of these data. I did also want to highlight that there's been a change in the way that they represented low survey areas or no survey areas. You might remember in version 1 of these data, they kind of grayed out areas in the prediction surfaces where they didn't make a prediction. And in this round, they opted to predict to the full extent of the study area and then to highlight areas as an overlay where there's no survey effort. And so you'll see in the map on the lower right that area is kind of gridded out or hatched out. That indicates areas where there was no survey effort and where caution should be used when interpreting results. So, fish update, couple of updates to that information. We did now produce summary products from the NEOMAP surveys. Those are the near-shore surveys. I believe we've showed some of that data before, but now we have summary products for those surveys. And then we did create 2 new species groups from this paper by Hare et al. In 2016. Those groups are species that are vulnerable to climate-related changes in abundance and species that are vulnerable to climate-related changes in distribution. And those are, I believe, the species that are vulnerable at a high or very high level. Here's the list of species groups that we're creating summary products for. Again, this list, with the exception of the 2 mentioned at the bottom, is the same as it was previously, same membership as it was previously, and we just added those new groups at the bottom. And I would refer you again to the change documents that we produced, which would have the list of what species are included in those groups. And then we also did a very minor methodology update to how we create the summary products from these individual species products. As mentioned in the you'll have to excuse me, they're doing construction in the room right below my conference room. So periodically, strategically, when I'm on a call, you might hear a little bit of a drilling sound. I'm going to just talk over that. So as we did in the cetacean information, the cetacean summary products, we're filtering out very, very low biomass values when we create our diversity indices, and that's something that we're carrying forward into the fish summary products as well. Okay, I would just then mention what we're working on for this fall. You know, we've got this version 2 information into web services, into the portals, which Karl and Emily will show you next. But we are working on additional data development over the course of the fall, and I wanted to give you just a heads up about that. We do have additional cetacean model updates that are just about ready and that we need to then bring into our summary data product creation. Here's a list of those species. The models there have been reviewed extensively with our colleagues in the Navy and in NOAA, and we feel that we're pretty close to being able to bring those into our data portals. And then also just to flag that we're looking at some improved data interpolations for abundance from the Northeast Fisheries Science Center data. So that if we, and just to highlight, once we get those data sets kind of better understood, brought into our system, then we'll be making summary products from those, updating the summary products that we've discussed today, and then pushing those out into the data portals. With that, I'm going to wrap up there, and I think a primary place to answer questions on the types of information that we're showing, modeling details, changes between version 1 and version 2, all of those pieces of information are stored at our CMAP MDAT website. The URL is here, but you're welcome to send Corey or I an email if you have any specific questions about this particular update. So with that, I just want to say thanks to both portal teams for giving us the chance to update all of you on this work, and looking forward to answering some questions from you guys and potentially speaking with folks who have questions and discussing updates to these data into the fall as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing here, pass it back to you guys.
All right. Emily, you're on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just walk us through real quick what it looks like on the Northeast Ocean Data Portal and how you can easily access the marine life data here. So this is our homepage, and there's a number of ways to access the data from here that I want to point out. The first being that up here at the resources menu, you can go directly to the data download page and download all of the marine life data that Jesse just talked about. Summary products, individual species products for all 3 taxa. And the metadata is nice and zipped up in those files with it, and a bunch of other information with the technical report. It's all there. So if you're GIS savvy and that's what you want to do and just go right directly to the data and pull it into your own work, this is the place to go first. For those of us that want to use the web mapper and just want to do a little bit of exploration first, there are another few ways to access the data. One of those is through the theme maps, which would be accessible by, looking at the marine life icon and choosing one of the taxa here. And the third option is the Data Explorer, which is a tool that allows you to overlay any layers that we have on the portal with each other and among themselves. So I'll just first start with the theme maps that have, again, a really direct view of the data, but fewer GIS-like capabilities. So in this view, we see the cetaceans, all cetaceans layer, and we can toggle between that and species abundance. We worked really hard with the Duke team to get a lot of the technical information integrated into this view, and it's very accessible to users with just as few clicks as possible. So here you see a graphic that explains how this summary product was developed, a link to the technical report, a link to the metadata, and a species list that tells you what you're looking at in this map, how many species are stacked up onto each other here. And that's the case for all of the layers in this marine life library, no matter where we are, looking at whatever type of species group that are toggleable here on the top bar, or whether we look at individual species. We can use the drop-down menus here to select a species. Let's select one that's definitely not even in our region. And then you can select months through another drop-down and go through, the average density products and all of the different uncertainty products as well. And again, the layer info box, when you click on the layer name, gives you additional information about what you're looking at. I'll also note the About This Map box for all of the marine life maps includes a ton of information, not just about the MDAT data, but about other sources of data about cetaceans, birds, and fish in our region, and in many cases pertinent to the mid-Atlantic as well. And I encourage you to go through and look through these About This Map boxes as just incredible resources of information about the marine life taxa. Just to point out quickly that there's a real nice parallel structure among all of the marine life taxa, and the interface looks exactly the same whether you're looking at birds, cetaceans, or fish. Of course, with fish, we do have several more individual species products that relate to each of the trawl surveys in the Northeast region, so the Long Island Sound trawl, Maine, New Hampshire trawl, NEMAP, which actually does cover the Mid-Atlantic region as well. It's the Southern New England and Mid-Atlantic trawl, and the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. And so we have some individual species products specific to those efforts that are quite distinct from the federal trawl that samples the entire Mid-Atlantic and Northeast regions. Just to quickly hop over to the Data Explorer so that you can get a sense for how these data sets are laid out here. There's a high-level label for fish, marine mammals, and sea turtles and birds. And within that little caret, when you select it, the same species groups are laid out here. And we also have the individual species products accessible by this widget. And it's similar among all of the taxa. And it basically replicates the same type of legends layout that we saw in the theme maps, where you can select a species, select a season, and add it to your layer list. So now I'm able to overlay this bird species with any other data on the portal. And so we could select energy infrastructure and look at the BOEM wind planning areas, and have both of these things show up on a map and toggle between them, adjust their visibility, and think about some questions we might have between these two layers. You can share this map with folks. The share tool generates a unique URL. You can also use it as a bookmarking tool to save it and come back to this map later and add more things or do more analyses. So if you have any questions about using the site, please don't hesitate to reach out to us either on Twitter or through our contact email that's located on our website. I should also note that we do have several tutorials that sort of replicate the workflows I just went through, but you can look at them on your own time. They're not through YouTube or anything. It's just video posted on our site, no sound. You can just watch it at your desk. And you access those here through our About menu. Also, our case studies that I mentioned earlier are available at this top menu. And our theme maps are all available through this tool as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Karl to do a tour of the Mid-Atlantic portal, and hope to hear from you all about how you're using our data and how you're using our site soon.
Okay, thank you very much. And can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right. So, again, my name is Karl Vilacoba, and I'm with the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal team. My presentation here will be very short, given that we have exactly the same data, really just presented a little bit differently from one portal to the next. To get to our mapping application, which we call Marine Planner, you can either click up here where it says Map next to that icon there, or down here, we have a cell for it, View Maps, right there. Before I do that real quickly, you can see up in this carousel, which tends to have the latest news, announcements to new data releases and tool upgrades and stuff like that. We have one right here for the marine life, given that this is our latest major release. And if you scroll down, it gives kind of a shorter version of the kinds of things that we discussed today, an overview of what's new, what it is. We do have a short minute-and-a-half video right there that tells you how to access this data on Marine Planner. And actually, after this, I'll update this webinar tease right here with the video for this one that we're watching today when I have that. And that will also be available in under this Help tab here on our webinars link and on the portal's blog, where you can always keep an eye on this page for a good view of the latest data and tools and information about how to use them and find them. So this is Marine Planner, and on the left-hand side here, we've got about a dozen different categories or themes of data, and you can see two here pertaining to marine life. One called just Marine Life, and the other one called Marine Life Library, and that's the one for specific species. So clicking on the first one, you'll find our groups. And right here, the birds drop down, the fish drop down, and the marine mammals drop down are all of the data that we just discussed that were developed through this MDAT effort. But you'll also see that there's some additional data layers here that were developed through separate projects or ingested from partners. So for the birds, for example, we can click on this first one, all avian species abundance. Once that's activated, you can click up here for the legend tab to get a view of what you're seeing. And this active tab right here gives you some other options to learn more about the data or change how it appears on your screen in different ways. So this little eye information icon will give you a quick little 3, 4, 5 sentence synopsis of what you're seeing with a read more link, which will take you to a full data catalog view, or in this case, I believe it clicks straight to the MDAT project page, and that's just taking a second to load. So in the meantime, you can also download the data by clicking right here. Go to the metadata, the source, which would be the MDAT website. And that's how you do it with all of our data on the portal. You'd have these options. We view ourselves as a public information effort and want to make as much data as we can available. There are some rare instances where there's privacy concerns or something like that which prohibit it. Right here, you adjust opacity. You can do that. That comes in handy, especially when you've got several different data layers open and it's becoming a bit muddled and you want to change how it looks. Another example would be out here if the unsurveyed area companion layer isn't very visible. You can turn that all the way up. You can turn the bird map a little bit down until it's to your liking. And of course, you can always either mute the layer or just X out of them completely right there. As far as the individual species layers, we put them here and created this search widget function to allow you to find them individually. We just felt like with 3,000 different data layers, it would have been totally unwieldy to offer them as just simple drop downs as we did with all of the other ones like checkboxes. So an example of how you would use that, marine mammal abundance. Let's say that we were interested in learning about humpbacks. So you could start typing. After 2 letters, you'll begin to see all of the different returns that would match the letters that you just put in there. So let's say humpback whales, it's September. We'll activate that one. And there you have it. And from there, it would function just like any of the other data layers where you've got the legend, you've got some options here about changing how it looks or Xing it out, and so forth. So that is about it. I would also just mention, if I didn't already at the top, that our URL is portal.midatlanticocean.org. And if you ever have any questions about anything that you're seeing, you can come right down on this homepage. There's an email. There's a provide feedback form that we have there. I get both of those, and I promise I will get back to you very quickly if you try to contact me like that. So with that, I think I'll open it up to the Q&A session. So for anyone out there who has a question, please just type it into the chat window, and I'll read it out loud so that especially anyone who's going to watch this recording can hear what's being asked and follow along.
Hey, Karl, this is Jesse. While folks are typing questions in, I did just want to highlight one thing that I think will be apparent to folks who've used both portals before. But we opted to make some symbology changes with the way our data appear in both portals. You'll notice we're using the Viridis color ramp, which is supposedly better for folks that are colorblind and helps convey the full range of data a little bit more clearly than the color ramps that we've used previously. And I didn't highlight that as a change, but you'll notice once you're logged into either site that is a pretty striking difference to the way that we've symbolized the data in the past.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a question from Austin Rizzo. I've been working on compiling information for the National Monument in the Atlantic. I've been using data from OBIS and the NARWC databases. Is this data portal using both of these resources?
So I can speak to that. It's a good question that we get often. The survey data that go into the mammal models or cetacean models that we've presented here probably also appear in other portals. Our lab maintains the OBIS CMAP data portal, so certainly the surveys that we're using to produce these models also appear in OBIS CMAP. Many of them appear in the right whale catalog. There is kind of some different rules about how data go into that catalog, et cetera. So there is a lot of overlap in those kind of catalogs that are more focused on the individual surveys that take place. Right, so those are going to be sightings-based mostly, and what we're presenting here are models that are created from those sightings. So we're not showing individual survey tracks or observation points in either of these portals for cetaceans, for example. But certainly the data behind our models are data that you would find in OBIS CMAP and in the right whale catalog.
Yeah, I shared my screen because I'm trying to bring up, I'm looking at the MDAT technical report, so I was able to access it from our, on the Northeast portal from this link here and where the layer info box is. And there's a really nice table in this report, looks like it's on page 27, that lists all of the surveys, at least, that are included in the cetacean models. And it looks like there's some links to other reports that you could get even more detailed information from.
Right, and I see from my dashboard that we have some more questions coming in. First one is from Kristen Ampella. My audio dropped for a bit, so sorry if I missed this. Are there any telemetry data included on the portal or only sightings data?
So I'll take a quick shot at that. Hey, Kristen, good to have you on the call. As well, Kristen would know this, of course, but for others, the mammal models that our group is producing do not use telemetry data to create them. We can use telemetry data in a validation process, but these have to be, vessel, aerial, or ship line transect surveys that we produce this information from. And I think that's true for the avian data as well. But I'll let Karl and Emily talk about whether there are any telemetry data that appear in other places on the portal, not the MDAT work that we've talked about today.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. We've had some really preliminary discussions with folks at the Fish and Wildlife Service about incorporating some of the data products derived from avian telemetry data. We're in the process of working those data up to include on the portal in addition to what you see here with the MDAT product. But so far, it's only been with avian species, only been associated with that specific project. But we're looking for other examples of telemetry data and data products that could be incorporated here. So if folks have ideas about how to represent telemetry data that would be compatible with the ways that we are representing other data on the portal, we would love to hear feedback about that.
Thanks for that, Emily. I have nothing else to add on that question. I do see we have another one from Kim Hernandez. Will the same widget pop-up box be developed for the Mid-Atlantic portal that summarizes the data and point to methodology and data sources like Emily is showing on her screen for total abundance? Kim, there's no plans for that at the moment to have that same exact kind of function. We have different technology stacks between the portals, and different ones have different capabilities as far as what they can do. I'm not aware if that is something that is possible given our current technology.
I'm just going to play in Data Explorer while people ask questions.
We have another question here from Austin Rizzo again. Another follow-up to my first question. I know that folks at the New England Aquarium are doing lots of cetacean studies in this area. However, their data is not being included in these models. Are these groups encouraged to share their data with your group? It seems like it could help flesh out the models.
A great question, Austin. We've been in touch with the folks at the New England Aquarium about obtaining some of their new survey data, and I think that our next round of models that we're currently working on will include those data. But you're correct that they do not appear in the models that are represented here.
Yeah, I'll also chime in on that. We've had conversations with that group as well, independent of MDAT even, just in terms of the portal group, in working with folks at the New England Aquarium and others that have observation, non-scientific observation data, or even whale watch groups that have valid observations of marine mammals, and brainstorming ways that could be incorporated on the portal in addition to the MDAT data as supplemental information. And some of the great GIS folks at New England Aquarium have helped us think about that in the past, and we hope we continue to work with them.
Yeah, these questions I think are great in the sense that they highlight that the process of improving these data is one that's kind of ongoing. There are new survey programs that are happening. There are survey programs are wrapping up and feeling then more comfortable to be able to share their information. And so our colleagues at the Navy who have contracted us to build these models recognize that. And so we've kind of got ongoing work that, we cut a new version of it in 2018 and we get more new data, whether that's new AMAPS data, data from the New England Aquarium surveys and others, Canadian data potentially, and then we rerun the models and make them both more current in terms of the data there and potentially, improve the statistical methods as well. So it's kind of an ongoing process. We just need to kind of cut new versions of the data and feed those into the portals, and you're witnessing here one of those little pauses to do that. But the work kind of to improve the models is continuing.
While we're waiting for other questions, one I'll throw out there. Can you speak a little bit to the process about how the new species and groups were chosen, as far as the not the ones that were updated, but the ones that are brand new this time around?
I think the main new species, I guess we could talk about the avian models as including a range of new species. I imagine that is related to finally having enough observations of those species to be able to make the models work. I think we probably have to dig into one of their technical reports to kind of get a sense of what those data thresholds are. Mm-hmm. But that's probably, they included 17 new surveys, and then I think that enabled them to have enough observations of some of those species to be able to make predictions for them. I know that that's true for some of the cetacean models that we, again, previously gilded all beaked whales together, and the fact that we're able to tease those apart is related to some improvements in models that help us figure out for ambiguous observations which species they probably were, and then also just having more information, more data to be able to generate more specific, taxonomically specific models.
Who else has a question? Going once. Okay, it looks like we may wrap up just a couple of minutes early here. So just a reminder to all of you who are on here. First of all, thanks everybody for coming out and being a part of this webinar today. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have a recording of this posted on both portals within the next couple of days. And when we do, certainly as far as the Mid-Atlantic goes, we'll send around an email to registered users. We'll put it on the site itself. We'll share it via Twitter. And for the Northeast, Emily, where might people find it for you guys?
Very similar. We'll tweet about it on our Twitter account, and you'll probably be able
is leaving the meeting.
But we'll make sure that the link is prominent in our materials and on our website. Thanks, Carl.
Great. Well, thanks again, everybody, and especially Emily and Jesse for making this happen. This was really great and helpful, and yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Definitely. Thanks, Carl.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl and Emily.
Everybody.
Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.